David Jobin is the president and CEO of Our Fund Foundation.
We have $25 million in assets, but we have $250 million in assets that are coming our way. And as I've gotten older, I realized that I can't do anything as well as I can do if I've got really good people around me. People live much more fulfilling lives in South Florida if they can hook into a nonprofit and start to find their tribe and start to identify people who have similar interests. And it's a perfect way to meet a spouse, friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your new role maybe as a yenta.
I know.
And there are, I am sure, story after story after story of that. Many call that, the gay Mecca in South Florida, which, of course, I think it is.
It is. You started off by saying, our vision is to make South Florida the most livable and thriving place in the country for LGBTQ people and remind those people that they will all die someday.
There you go.
And that we're here for them when that happens.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Marty Davis Show, where we turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones and bring you conversations and informations that inspire, teach, and hopefully entertain. Today we're filming at the magnificent, beautiful, artsy Arlo Wynwood Hotel. It's here in the middle of Miami's art district. It reflects the neighborhood you need to visit. It's done by an award-winning architect, Marty Davis. Unfortunately, no relation to me. I'm from the poor side of the family. But he has done just a magnificent job of capturing the neighborhood and the artistic feel and vibe. I'm excited today because I'm bringing to the show a friend. And he's a community leader that has spent decades working in the philanthropic space in making the world a better place through arts, culture, and philanthropy. So David Jobin is the president and CEO of Our Fund Foundation, a community foundation based in Broward with $25 million in assets, with the goal of making Miami-Dade and Broward the best place in the country for the LGBTQ community. So I'm so interested in having him share his story to encourage all of us to do more for our community, because it not only changes lives, it's going to make a difference for the next generation. So David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that introduction. I feel like you should give my eulogy.
There you go. Well, I can do that for you too, but we need to wait a while on that. That reminds me, before we get started, I'm in the theater in New York, and I'm watching, it was Devil Wears Prada. And this woman sits next to me, and she starts to cry a little bit, and there's an empty seat between her and I. And I said, well, is somebody coming to greet you here? And she said, no, I'm sorry that my husband recently passed away. And, this was an important, I really wanted to see this musical. And I said to her, well, do you have any friends or anything that could have come with you to this? I hate to see you alone. And she said, well, they're all at the funeral. But anyway, we digress.
That was well told.
David, you have a unique career journey. You were in San Francisco, you were in Pittsburgh, you were doing managing theater there, right?
Right.
And then the Gay Men's Chorus in D.C.
Right.
Now heading Our Fund Foundation. What was the turning point for you that moved you from theater management and all to philanthropy?
So I was that gay theater kid in high school and college, and I probably wasn't a talented enough actor to make a career of this, but I love that field and I love that environment. So I was really fortunate when I got out of college. I got an internship at the Pittsburgh Public Theater in education and outreach, and that kind of morphed into a career at the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera. And you keep hearing the name Pittsburgh because that's kind of where I graduated from college. And I spent almost 20 years in theater management, which moved into fundraising, because the more I advanced in theater, I went from education and outreach to become a managing director, which encompasses the fundraising component.
Right.
So development directors were reporting to me, so I had to kind of learn that field, something that I really had not, it wasn't something that interested me initially. It kind of frightened me a little bit, asking people for money. And the more I was involved in theater, the more I realized you're not really asking people for money as much as you are reminding them of the importance of the organization you represent. And I worked in theater for 20 years, And I will be honest with you, I was most energized in the theater when the work we were doing was LGBTQ related. And I really noticed that my interest peaked a lot. And I think I was a better communicator and a better fundraiser about those opportunities. I was singing at the time in San Francisco with the Gay Men's Chorus of San Francisco. And there was a managing director in the room, an executive director of that chorus, which I'd never seen before. I'd sung with smaller choruses, but it was a professional job. And I thought, that's the job I really want. And he was going nowhere. But that same job opened up at the Washington, D.C. Gay Men's Chorus, which is larger, at the time was larger than San Francisco's even. And I applied for that job and moved back to the East Coast to take that job on. And then it just kind of moved into the LGBTQ space because I think I'm a better communicator. I think I have a little more passion about this as a cause. So when my husband Angel got a job at Florida International University, and I realized we were going to have to make the move from Washington, D.C., as much as I was not excited at the time about moving to Florida. I got a job at Stonewall National Museum and Archives, which stayed in that same LGBTQ space. And our largest fundraiser was the Our Fund Foundation. And all I wanted was this job. And it opened up and I got it.
Well, that's great. I have a special feeling for the Stonewall Museum also because I met my partner, Michael, at the annual fundraiser for Stonewall.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, it'll be 2.5 years ago now. So,
Great.
it was great. And so
I'm going to take credit for your relationship.
you absolutely should.
When I was at Stonewall is when we started the annual fundraiser. They never did one before.
Well, see,
and
look at
when
that.
I was there, we did a fundraiser with Megan Mullally at the Parker Playhouse.
Oh, very good.
And that event raised a lot of money. And I think that once we did that, it kind of became part of their fundraising mechanism, and it's gone on since.
Well, and it's an amazing organization that we have here in Fort Lauderdale.
People are so surprised.
Absolutely, and a meeting space, and you had an Our Fund event and their theater space there not too long ago. So
Right.
It's great. Well, I'm glad that you're happy that you're in South Florida. I know
love it.
that over the years that I've been here, since the 60s, art and culture has increased 1,000-fold, and Miami used to be the wasteland of culture, and now we have so many things, and Fort Lauderdale is a close second, and with the amount of wealth that we have here,
Right.
we're getting some great theater, some great music, some great symphony. It's great.
So I worked in theater a lot of years, and I'm a little bit of a theater snob. And in Washington, D.C., we had Arena Stage, we had the Studio Theater, we had Woolly Mammoth. So the move to South Florida was going to be tough for me, I thought.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first weekends that we were here visiting, we went to Island City Stage in Wilton Manors and saw their very first production. I think they've been around now for 13 or 14 years, so that's how long ago it was. And we walked out and I said, Angel, this is all going to be okay. It was a great production, a professional production. They focus on LGBTQ work. So I was interested in the topic, and it proved to be true. There's so much art and culture here. You have to seek it out a little bit more than maybe other cities because the names of the organizations aren't as prominent.
Right.
But once you find them and discover them, I think the quality of the work here is amazing.
It is amazing. And, part of that is the affordability of it all, too, here.
Right.
We were recently in New York, and I wanted to go see Oh Mary, and the tickets were going to be $500. And, that's just not affordable. And you come here, and we have the Broward Center, and we see things for, 10% of that price, quite frankly, or close to that.
Right.
And we're seeing some great things. So I think it's wonderful. Then question number 2 on my list of top hits here are, you've often said that our fund works at the intersection of wealth and need. I think you touched on this just a moment ago, but for someone who has not heard about legacy giving, how do you best explain that to them?
So it's an interesting concept because we're a nonprofit, but we don't operate like traditional nonprofits where we have a product and we ask people to give money so we can keep doing that product. Our fund is a little bit different, and mostly what we do is we talk to people about their wills and estates. And I always say, how do you carry on the values by which you live your life when you're no longer here? I will be honest. I think with in the straight general population, when there are oftentimes children, that conversation is a little different because you assume that your children will carry on your values. And I understand the inclination for parents to leave wealth to their children. I think when we're talking about an LGBTQ population, which, you know, in the generation we're in, is less likely to have children than maybe the young people who are following, younger people who are following us. You know, there's a void there. You know, I tell people, you know, I have a close relationship with my nephews and my niece, but when I pass, knocking on wood, you're not going to give my eulogy very soon. You know, they're likely to be in their 60s. I don't think I worked my whole life to pass along my wealth to my 65-year-old nephew so that he can pass it along to his children 20 years after that. So we're a better fit for LGBTQ people, I think. You know, I always say we're a little bit modeled after what I consider we're modeled after Jewish federations, right? That your tribe is best positioned to care about your tribe.
Your tribe.
So it's an easier conversation for us to have, especially in kind of the political climate we're in. You know, I say to people, and this is the truth, when gay marriage passed, it was one of the worst things for our fund.
Yes.
Because I think the LGBT
give it to the
community
spouse.
in general thought, well, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, our work is done. Congratulations, we achieved what we set out to achieve. And we're reminded now that we are always going to be a marginalized class. We are always going to be disenfranchised. We're always going to be othered. And we're always going to need additional resources just to keep up. So this has been an interesting environment for us. The last 2 or 3 years in Florida and the last year or so nationally has reminded people of the importance of giving back, and we make it easy.
Absolutely, you do. And we can see in the political climate, whether it's LGBTQ or not now, arts and culture are on the chopping block, whether it's in education or whether it's in performance art. So we need this, and we need the support of organizations like our fund.
Well, even we talked about Stonewall National Museum and Archives. And I remember when I worked at Stonewall, you know, we said we're here to preserve LGBT history. And I think people thought, well, who's threatening it?
Yeah, right.
And now we're reminded.
Now you know.
It could disappear tomorrow, right? Our stories are being rewritten every day. And unless Stonewall is keeping it safely within those walls and in those archives, it could disappear.
There you go. Listen, people are talking about slavery wasn't such a bad thing.
Right.
So, you know, anything can be attacked. You know, it's a crazy world. But, you know, I think part of our job of folks at my age and your youth is
so
getting people to appreciate that we do have a responsibility to give back. And it's not just for the ultra wealthy that give back, that we all can do some small part. And quite frankly, I think that overall philanthropy sees that the people with moderate to medium means give more as a percentage of their wealth than the ultra wealthy. Right. So it's depending on the regular folks like us that give a little, because there's a lot of us, it makes a big difference, right?
It makes a big difference, you know, especially when we're talking about legacy giving. You know, we're not asking people to write a check right now from the resources they have. You know, I always say it's the sale of your condo or your car or your company. You're leaving something behind.
Right.
You're going to be worth something when you're no longer here. And it's a little morbid to talk about, but, you know, people can make a big difference in an organization or a cause they care about by making that move now.
Sure.
So, but I appreciate that you said about the ultra wealthy as a percentage of their giving. I'm not certain why that's the case, you know, and I think there are people now who are changing that dynamic. You know, we do our philanthropy
Thank goodness
awards.
for Warren Buffett. Yes.
Right. We do our philanthropy awards every year so we can take those wealthy people who are setting an example and put them on a pedestal so other people can see that this is actually happening and this is a model you can follow.
Absolutely. Yeah. So because it's very true, because all of us will leave something.
Right.
And our partners, our spouses are certainly, we want to take care of, but there is that little piece of the things that we used to enjoy together that we can keep alive.
Right.
And, you know, no matter what it is, and there's just so many needs in every community, but in ours especially. So I think it's great, and I think it is good that you talk about it's the car, it's the condo, it's my collection of, you know, Weebles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I always say the LGBTQ community, I mean, we run in similar crowds. And I think I always say we're like an iceberg. We see the tip of the iceberg. We see the people of wealth who have the means to be out and about and kind of get their name out there, and not super wealthy. I mean, just people who are getting by. But we are a disenfranchised population. We earn less money than the general population. We have greater health disparities than the general population. So there is a huge community of people who need to be lifted up. And we're fortunate that we've got a largely childless population to step in and do that.
There you go. Because, the other part of all of that is my last guest that we had was a woman that has 2 children. And I continually ask them, they're good friends, how on earth did you live and pay for all of that with the kids? Because, I know I have a few shekels, but it's, I couldn't afford another $75,000 for the kid to go to college and then eat.
I had that conversation with my parents probably 20 years ago where I just thanked them. And I said, I can't imagine what it was like for me to say, I need $50 for camp. I need $20 for, a T-shirt for a play. I just can't imagine a young person following me around asking me for $50 every 10 minutes.
That's right. And now we have our community that may not have that parent or may not have that source of income, and they still need all of those things. Yeah. And where the foundation comes in.
So we have to keep giving $50 every 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
It feels great.
Yes. It does feel good, yes. And, and these kids look good in them. Yeah. So it's all great. But, I do think it's such a important thing that we don't instill in our youth as well as we could, that it feels good.
I know.
And it feels good when you see someone else come along that you have helped, whether it's, supporting at the gay men's chorus and you see those guys singing their hearts out, or it's to some local arts group that's doing a theater project where the kids get to do something that they really love that may turn into a career or may turn into an opportunity to meet someone special for their lives. And you all play such a great role in that. And the other part about all of this is that it gives our community another opportunity to meet like-minded people and have a lovely conversation, as we did at your event at Stonewall. And I'm talking to people that I don't normally see. They may not be at a bar or they're not at a function that I normally go to. So it's a great opportunity for growth of the community in that way too.
I'm always careful not to criticize bar culture because I love gay bars. Wilton Drive is gay Disneyland, I think. And when I have guests in from out of town, certainly that's one of the things we all view. But I also think it's not a great place to meet like-minded people because we're talking about, South Florida.
Unless you want to meet people that also like to drink.
Right. But also probably on any given evening, probably 60 to 70% of those people are from out of town. They're not going to be your lifelong friends.
Right, yeah.
So you've already got a limited number of people you're going to meet. And then there's the likelihood that they have similar interests. So if you go to a Stonewall benefit or you go to an opening night of a play, you're surrounded by people who already have something in common with you. I think people live much more fulfilling lives in South Florida if they can hook into a nonprofit and start to find their tribe and start to identify people who have similar interests. And it's a perfect way to meet a spouse, friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. Well, I met Michael, so it's all good. And he still puts up with me.
I get him.
And he still talks to the people that invited him to the Stonewall. So that's all good too. But it is great because, Florida's become this flashpoint, it seems to be, for, erasing as much LGBTQ awareness as anywhere in the country. And
before you go to your next question.
Yes.
And this is a senior moment for me, but speaking of meeting someone and marrying them,
David Jobin.
meeting someone at the Stonewall benefit and the Mega Mullally benefit, my best friend met his husband at that Mega Mullally event.
Really?
I swear to God, that night, you're
going to rename it the matchmaking group.
It was my board chair who asked, "Can I meet your friend?"
Isn't that funny?
And he said to me, "Can I meet your friend?" And I said, "We have to make a lot of money tonight. Could you leave me alone?"
Yeah.
And then he asked me again, and I said, "I'm not kidding.
Yeah, right.
I'm not playing matchmaker tonight." But at the end of the night, he met my friend. The next year at that same event, which Cheyenne Jackson was performing, he got engaged that night. So Stonewall, it all revolves around Stonewall.
It all works. And you're right. It's like-minded people seeing other like-minded people.
I can't believe I
and not
forgot
at a
that.
bar. Yeah,
Right.
no, that's great. Very good. Your new role maybe is a yenta.
I know. Who
And
knows?
it's all good. And but it is. I think that we need to circle around. I chair the Greater Miami Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. And we just had a rally because of the erasing of the sidewalks on South Beach and the governor's requirement of that. And we had 400 people on 1 week's notice marching across and making a great statement. And as you see in Orlando, they've erased the sidewalk where the Pulse nightclub was, but a neighboring business said, hey, I've got a parking lot with 60 spots in it. I think you need to paint those in rainbow.
Right.
And even more creative. And so we need to be there, and we need to be there to support our community. So I think it's great what you're doing. But how does our fund play a role in this idea of, well, let's erase as much of this LGBTQ community as we can?
So, you started off by saying, our vision is to make South Florida the most livable and thriving place in the country for LGBTQ people. And I feel we've had a lot of success with that. Now our goal is just to make it survivable, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many programs being taken away. Just for instance, we just learned last week, there are a number of organizations who depended on funding for HIV/AIDS work, who are all losing their funding.
Right.
Now, Miami-Dade and Broward have the number 1 and number 2 counties in the country for new HIV cases. That's a life and death situation that we're facing, right? So we're fortunate at our fund that we can step in, not that we can make up that difference, but we can help mitigate the damage that is coming from the state and our federal government. Like I said, we're helping to make it survivable. We'll get back on track of making it thriving at some point, hopefully. But for now, our focus is really just how do we get through this kind of, the incredibly stressful times that we're living in.
Talk to me about how our fund does its funding to organizations. What are you looking for? What is that give that you give to these organizations?
So there's a couple different answers to that. We do traditional kind of foundation grant making. It's a competitive process. We put out an RFP, a request for a proposal. We say we want to improve health and wellness outcomes for LGBTQ people, and we'll have 40 applications. 40 agencies will apply. We've got a bucket of money for that, $500,000. Community leaders come in, read the applications, score them, and make those decisions. So that's pretty traditional. Mm-hmm. We do a community needs assessment every 5 years. So what we determine from that needs assessment is what are the priorities in the community. 5 years ago when we did it, one of the priorities was about how do we protect unhoused LGBTQ youth. We can't protect the entire community, but what we set out to do, we raised $1.5 million to purchase a property, a 12-bed facility in Broward, which is the Sunshine Pride House. It's operated by Sunshine Cathedral. The services are provided by SunServe for wraparound services so that these young people are set on course for a much better life than they would be otherwise. That was really also for us to use that as a model for other traditional general population youth shelters to get a better understanding of how they can cater to our community when we're largely disproportionate number of unhoused youth or LGBTQ youth. So that's an example of us kind of flexing a muscle outside of that traditional grant making where we identify what the need is, we identify the partner. Right now we're putting together a program, and this is out of the last needs assessment. There's a crisis that's facing men who have sex with men, gay men, but MSM community, who are addicted to methamphetamines. Mm-hmm. It's largely kind of unspoken because of the population that it impacts. It's not your traditional kind of community of kind of people who are afflicted by drug abuse. So right now we are seeking out a partner to operate a facility in Wilton Manors that'll be a drop-in center that'll operate outside of traditional kind of facility hours. So it'll be open while people would be using otherwise. So when those opportunities and those urges come along, there's a place they can go to that will provide them some safety and security and some promise. So that's an example of us, another example of us really digging into the community, finding the partners, putting them together, raising the money. Again, we will raise $1.5 million for that program.
That's great. So you are working to identify the needs as well as asking others to give you their assessment of the needs.
And then we work at that intersection of need and wealth. So we did an event with the methamphetamine house at a donor's home. We had two pretty wealthy gentlemen who spoke about their experience with meth and how it impacted their lives. Both of them went to prison. That's the reason that they got off of meth. They really turned their lives around. But it was an impactful moment for our donors to see these people who run in their social circles who had no idea that these two individuals had gone through that crisis in their life. And we raised $100,000 that night.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, I am sure, story after story after story of that. And so if you had one message to give to the community, that who do you need to know to build your war chest, so to speak, and how can people introduce you to those people or organizations?
So when we're talking about people and we're talking about a war chest, we're a 15-year-old organization, almost 16. So we understand that we play the long game, right? So you mentioned at the top, we have $25 million in assets, but we have $250 million in assets that are coming our way. That people who have identified us in their will, they've told us the amount of money that's coming our way. That'll be 15, 20, 25, 30 years from now. So that war chest is being built. The challenge for us and the people we need to be put in touch with are people who are philanthropic, who have some questions about what their legacy planning will give. A light goes off when they talk to us. I always say when people walk out the door having signed the paperwork that they're leaving us in their estate, there's such relief because this is something that people have been, it's been a quandary of theirs, right? I mean, they're building this wealth. They're not certain what they're going to do with it when they leave. And once they've resolved that, and once they know that it's going to help a community that helps support them through their lives. You and I both benefited from having a robust, vibrant LGBTQ community that really supported us through
absolutely.
What could have been really perilous times. So those are the people we need to be put in touch with. The agencies are important to us because they have those donors in there. They already have those donors.
Right.
Many of the people who have left our fund in their will came to us through an agency. The rub there is that the agency has to understand that we're not taking that donor from them, right? We're making certain that we can help leverage a much larger gift than they might get during that person's lifetime when that person passes to give back to that agency. So it's an odd marriage that we have with agencies.
Well, a lot of those agencies aren't focused on the legacy giving.
They can't be. They don't have the resources. They don't have the financial relationships that we have with our financial institution. You get a lot of attention when you invest $25 million.
Right.
We have a really sophisticated finance committee associated with our fund. We look at our investments constantly. No agency is prepared to look after these kind of gifts. And honestly, if you're leaving a $5 million gift to Stonewall, and I was the executive director of Stonewall, love their work, I don't think they're set up to get a $5 million legacy gift.
Right.
They are, however, they could benefit from $250,000 a year being thrown off from that $5 million legacy gift.
Right.
So that's what we're here to do, is make sure that gift is protected in perpetuity, as well as the agency that it's meant to support.
And so how do you approach a potential donor? Is it through their estate planning attorneys? Do you have the estate planning attorneys, and they're usually just individuals saying, how do I do this? How does all that work?
So we're fortunate, we're still a pretty tight-knit community. And not that all LGBTQ people have LGBTQ attorneys, but there are a handful of attorneys, and we could name them in Miami-Dade and Broward, who have probably over 50% of LGBT wealth kind of in their network. So we want to make certain that those estate attorneys know about us. I'm talking about the Liz Schwartzes, the Jeff Selzers, Andrew Jimenez. We know who those attorneys are. So yes, we want to make certain that they're well-versed on what our fund can do. But other than that, I still think it's about word of mouth. I think we have to constantly be out there making certain that our supporters have the tools that they need, so at a dinner party they can talk effectively about our fund.
Right.
So we put a lot of time and resources into our annual reports. We still have printed materials that we want to make certain people have, in their home that they can share. We make certain our board members are armed with documents that they can go out that help explain what we do. I think we have a sophisticated website that people can visit that'll walk them through that process. But in the end, we're a very, very people-to-people business. You have to sit across from someone and have a trust that you can leave them a 7-figure gift,
Right.
and it's going to be well taken care of.
It's interesting, having moved from Miami to Fort Lauderdale now, the difference in community and the difference in talking points. I found that Miami was far more business-oriented. We'd talk money, we'd talk income, we'd talk what they were doing, how they were spending their money. You get to Fort Lauderdale, and it's about dinner parties and the travels that they made. Very rarely do we find out what people did before they retired. And very rarely is there any discussion of money other than knowing that someone was on the 120-day cruise, that they had some disposable assets. What's the message we send to that community to say, hey, have you thought about this? Where do we get that word out? No, this is Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale?
This is your home. And I'm talking about the little social circle that I've been involved in, where I don't hear that people were thinking about all of that, or that maybe they have an estate plan, but maybe that's in Michigan or wherever they're from. But how does it affect the community, and how do we get them to give you money?
I will say, I think Fort Lauderdale has a more tight-knit LGBTQ community.
Yes, I agree.
And it's not just geographically, but people know one another a little bit better. So it's essential for us in Broward specifically to know that network of estate attorneys, because I could name 5 attorneys who have
everybody
75% of the wealth. So that's one way that we do it. We also really invest in arts and culture in a way in Broward, so that we're constantly in front of those audiences. There are a number of theater companies who will let us speak before the show. There are a lot of arts organizations that will let us speak before the show, because that's an attentive, literal audience, right? I mean, people physically facing you in a seat.
Right.
And you have their undue attention for 3 to 5 minutes, and we make certain we get our message out to them.
Yeah.
So I would say the investment we make in arts and culture in Broward, yes, we're here to help those agencies, but there's also a little piece of it for us that's marketing dollars.
Yeah, okay, well, good. Because I want you in front of Outshine, and I want you in front of, some of those folks that are there. And I know that you're involved with Outshine.
We just agreed to make a pretty large sponsorship of the Museum Discovery and Science is doing the premiere of this Wicked sequel.
Right.
267 people in the audience. We will be there that night. We'll be able to show our video before the movie. We'll be able to do kind of a presentation and really do a little storytelling about the difference we're making in the community, and remind those people that they will all die someday.
There you go.
And that we're here for them when that happens.
And if you give money to you, you're going to live a lot longer.
Right.
So it's peace of mind, right?
I just did a presentation at Front Runners. Do you know what Front Runners is? It's an LGBT group of people who run.
Yeah. Clearly, I'm not involved, but I just know it. Yes,
I said
know.
to them, I said, the one thing you cannot outrun is death.
That's right.
Brought the room down a little bit, but it kind of makes the point. And they're going to live a long time. Those people have great cholesterol, I'm sure. And their blood
I'm
pressure
sure it's all
perfect,
good, except for that one guy that was the runner and dropped dead. But whatever.
Other than him.
Yeah. He probably wasn't gay. And I think that's great. I have to talk to you afterwards about that, because I think I was invited to that party.
The Front Runners?
Wicked. No,
Wicked?
Wicked, yes.
Yeah.
And so
You'll be there. Good.
Those are great people for you to know. I know about their 5 homes on the Intercoastal. But you're reaching out to cultural arts groups. You're reaching out to the estate planning lawyers. What can we do in, let's say, the legal community that may be outside the LGBTQ, close-knit group? Because coming from Miami,
right,
it isn't that close. You may have gay clients, and you may have a lot of other clients, because it's so homogenized down here now. Is it the businesses that can help you as well? What about some of the corporate dollars? Do corporate dollars come into effect for you, or is that not your area?
It's not our area, and I'll tell you why. It's because we don't want to be we don't want to pick sides, right? Mm-hmm. I feel as though there is an endorsement of our fund that a corporation, it may look like we're partnering them in a way. I would say this, we've had estate attorneys who want to partner with us. We've had financial advisors who want to partner with us. We're very careful. We want to be Switzerland. We want all estate attorneys to like us. We want all financial advisors to like us. So we don't want someone who is a financial advisor to pick up our annual report and see another financial advisor's name attached to it, because we have to be very, very neutral in that space. But when you talk about Miami, I mean, that's part of the reason we joined the chamber, right? I mean, the chamber is a respected organization. They've got a huge network. I mean, there's no LGBT people in Miami who are not in some way associated with the chamber. So that was, for us, that was strategic to get in front of their stakeholders, just to see our name over and over. It's repetition. It takes,
and we need to do more on that. And we're going to talk about that afterwards too, because part of what we're doing with the podcast is promoting those that are in the chamber in Miami and our 1,200 members, and to spread that view, because the idea is that we're all working together for the betterment of the whole. And how can we best accomplish that? So it's great. And because we're not as tight-knit as Broward here in Miami, we need these organizations to kind of pull people together, because we're spread out all over Miami-Dade.
But there's some great models for philanthropy in Miami, I will say. I mean, there's some big names who have really given back to LGBTQ causes over the decades. So they're luminaries who, in Miami, if you just say those names, I'm thinking like Jim Pepper. I mean, he's one of the original LGBT philanthropists in our country, and he happens to live in Miami. So,
so it's good.
When we can say that people like Jim Pepper are associated with our fund, that is the good housekeeping seal of approval,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. No. And talking about the difference between Dade and Broward, you're in Wilton Manors, right?
Yeah.
And
our office is in Wilton Manors, but we do work, both kinds,
But you live in Wilton Manors.
I live in Wilton Manors.
Yes.
I live in the heart of it all.
And so many call that, the gay Mecca in South Florida, which of course I think it is.
It is.
And so for our viewers to know a little bit more about David Jobin, what's life like for you in gay Mecca with your husband and dog?
I will get to that, but my friends, we went on a gay cruise to Alaska. This is 10 years ago. And on the last day, they're from Pittsburgh, they're from around the country, Washington, D.C., and they all said, "This is so sad. Our lives are going to go back to normal tomorrow." And I said, "My life will be exactly like this, just less water." It'll be exactly the same. So, I'm really fortunate. I also, because I work at our fund, I've got this really large network of friends. It's introduced me to a lot of people who, they're clients of our fund, but first and foremost, they're friends who I care a great deal about. So I've got my husband and I have a pretty active social life. I would say that we are out at least 6 nights a week at events that are sponsored by agencies or plays or concerts or dinner parties. So it's a pretty full evening life. My days are pretty much filled with our fund and my dogs, but it's a really fulfilling life. I think about, if you ever go to Tropics, which is an older crowd.
There you go.
Tropics on Wilton Drive on a Friday night, there are over 150 men who are over 60 or 70 or maybe 80 or 90.
Yes.
And I think if you were anywhere but Wilton Manors, these people would be watching the original Matlock.
Right.
They would be at home watching television.
Right.
They would not be thinking about, what am I going to wear tonight? How am I going to look tonight? Who's meeting me there? Who will be there? Am I going to get a good table? Is my favorite bartender going to, it gives people a whole different level of fulfillment. And I think it keeps us young.
I do too. I think it's
really
great.
Do.
And, the best part of all of that is just what you've said, is that it gives people a purpose.
Yeah.
And as we do get older and you are retired and you slow down or perhaps slow down, that idea of purpose and why you get up in the morning is really important. And I think that's one of the benefits for me involved in what little philanthropy and boards I sit on, is that it feels good. You feel like you're doing something good for the community or the organization, and you are helping that next generation understand the importance of giving back.
Right.
I don't have any children, but it would be one of the lessons that I learned from my dad. It's not so much how much you give, it's that you give in one way or another. Yeah. My dad used to go to Salvation Army at Christmas time and buy all the bicycles. And as families would come in and they'd want a bike and, maybe they'd say, I can't really afford it or whatever, it's paid for. Right. It's great. So it's moments like that, it's great. So if you can give to an organization with young people who, as you're doing with maybe disenfranchised or families have, said, get out, man, they've got no place to go. And you can make a huge difference. Right. In their life with very little effort. There's nothing better than that. To see the faces of kids that get the toys. We have a holiday toy drive at the Chamber every year in December where we give thousands of toys away because people come to a party and the entrance fee is a toy. It's great. Yeah. And then we spend all this time showing the families who are getting the toys and the kids' faces. So there's nothing better than that. Nothing. And just as you're doing with with SunServe and what they're helping with, and that model on the shelter and housing, I think is just so important because can you imagine? I think your home life was probably pretty good, as was mine, and we had supportive parents, and what it would have meant not to have that.
I can't imagine.
I can't either. Right. And so. And then to get out into this world where people are saying you can't really have a flag and you can't do this and you can't do that, how awful could you feel? Yeah. So, and where is your chance? I think it's so important, and I love what you do, and I want to promote our fund as much as we can, and certainly we're going to do that more in Miami for you. You're very organized in Fort Lauderdale, and we appreciate the involvement that you have in the chamber. But I digress. You've worked in all of these areas of theater and the chorus and philanthropy. Looking back, what did you learn most from the art world?
The importance of teamwork, the importance that one person can't make the difference that two people can make, and that can't make the difference that three people make. Theater is really a collaborative art form, but I feel like our office space is collaborative. I feel like everything we do is collaborative. And to be able to make certain that you maintain relationships, that you don't shut yourself off from potential partnerships in any way. And our fund is, I said we're Switzerland, but we're in the center of it all. We have to get along with every agency. We have to get along with every donor. Sure. And that's what I really took away from that is, like all young people, and especially young people who are certain that they're special like I was, I think you tend to maybe think with this go it alone approach when you're young. And as I've gotten older, I realized that I can't do anything as well as I can do if I've got really good people around me.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say that at home. I would say that my personal relationships, just everything. We're better off when we're connected.
Absolutely. And hopefully we're surrounding ourselves with people who know something more than we know. Right. And that I try and do that, finding people smarter than me all the time, which isn't necessarily hard, but it's, it's like, listen, thing. And because we learn every day then, and you can be part of that team, which it is all part of it. So.
I always say there's two types of managers. There are managers who think that they are smarter than everyone around them, and there are managers who know they're not. And I am that. I am surrounded by people who are much better at their jobs than I could ever be at those jobs.
Well, and if you didn't, you're making a mistake. Or you shouldn't be a manager. Right. And I agree with you. Part of the reason for doing this podcast is to share knowledge of experts. We bring on people that know more than we do, with my philosophy of surrounding myself with smarter people behind and in front of the camera. So what's the practical lesson that you can share on where people should look to the future, and if they are caring about the LGBT community, what can you share with them as to being a pathway for making them feel better, making them feel engaged, and making them feel significant to our community?
To donors, to people who are considering giving back.
Okay.
I look back for myself. I look back at how challenging life was as a young gay man. I can remember a brick being thrown through the living room of my house in Aurora, Ohio. It was really tough. And I think it was tough for a lot of young people, right? And I know that it gets better, the whole It Gets Better campaign. That's challenging right now because it doesn't seem like it's getting better. But in fact, the futures of young people today young gay people are so much brighter than the futures we had at the time. I mean, you look at, especially, I mean, people our age and a little bit older. I mean, we lived through a plague, right? So I mean, a lot of people who were, our age or slightly older
Aren't here
anymore. So certainly got better for us. But I do think that there is a philanthropic community out there who is motivated to give because they want to create a better pathway for young LGBTQ people. And it goes back to, this is a tribe protecting its tribe. And there is something really satisfying, and it gives me great comfort to know that we are surrounded by like-minded people. I know that we can shut ourselves off from the general population sometimes, and I think it's intentional. I think we do it so that we feel safe. There are so many unsafe messages coming at us, especially in the news and from politics right now, that to physically surround ourselves with people who we know care about us and think like us I think it gives such power right now. And I think we need to really focus on that in a way that we maybe have been moving away from in the last decade or so.
Well, I think that the geopolitical environment right now is helping us realize that, and helping us realize that we do need to not be complacent. We do need to take some action, whatever that is and whatever we're comfortable in, but we just can't sit.
I'm always looking for the silver lining, but I do feel like this moment is going to benefit us. And I think back to, it was the HIV/AIDS crisis that really galvanized our movement. I mean,
Absolutely.
We were never a movement before that, right? We were a lot of individual people who liked Judy Garland, but little did we know that we had this power when we came together. And I think that this will bring us together again, not just the older generation who's lived through this, but I think we're starting to gain an appreciation for people who are younger, who are coming behind us and getting ready to turn over the reins to them. That I think there's nothing that'll hold us back.
Yeah, they're seeing that. It's becoming apparent in that group that I was in about the rainbow crosswalks. I would have said 75% of the people in that group of 300-400 were under 30.
Right.
They are the voice, and they realize that.
And they can get on their knees and paint and stand back up.
Oh
in 2
my
seconds.
God! Yeah, no, and that's other
us?
than and they can stand out in the heat, and they don't, listen, and the sunscreen that they didn't wear and all that stuff. No, listen, it's like I have to reapply. Sorry, because that's the piece of advice that I can give young people: wear sunscreen. My God, it's
You're
just
a sage.
unfair.
You're a sage.
Really, no. And whoever, and I can remember going to the beach, and you would put on
we would like oil up because we wanted more.
Yes, and what was it? Bain de Soleil had just grease that you put on your face, and it kind of made you orange, so you kind of looked a little tan, but it just intensified the sun.
I was a lifeguard in high school and college, and look at me. I was orange, and at the time I thought it was something like that. I thought that was a good thing.
Yeah.
But I was orange from June to August.
Yeah,
I mean, literally orange. I never tanned. I just kept getting more and more orange. Well,
yes.
Now look at me. God,
there you
I
go.
can pass for Trump.
Well, hey, listen, because we have to, listen, I had orange hair for a while too, but that's a whole other story. So I love to have a little rapid fire at the end of every, to just get to know you a little bit better, and top of mind. Okay. So biggest myth about LGBTQ philanthropy?
That everyone wants to give back. There's a huge section you mentioned that there are a lot of LGBTQ people with wealth who it's never occurred to them to give back.
Yeah. And it's lack of education, right?
It's lack of education. There's some people who are just never going to get there. A lot of people say to me, I have a rich gay, neighbor. They need to know about our fund. I said, well, if they're not philanthropic, you could teach them about our fund, but we are not able to make them philanthropic. That has to be instilled in you at, I think, a pretty young age.
Yeah. Very good. One project you wish more people knew about at our fund?
I wish more people knew about donor advised funds. We have donor advised funds just like Fidelity, but unlike Fidelity, we have a group of experts who can help you make smart investments. Fidelity can facilitate your giving, but there are a lot of tax advantages to donor advised funds. I mean, this is your world. So I wish more people knew about that, because you don't have to be uber wealthy to take advantage of that. There are great tax benefits to establishing a donor advised fund that you can give out through the rest of your life.
Right. Hardest decision you've had to make as CEO?
I think every time we do grant decisions, it's the hardest decision. It happens every time. Giving away or helping to facilitate granting of money, giving away of money is so gratifying, but it hurts every single time an agency doesn't get a grant.
Right.
Because they need it, the time and thought that went into it. And, right now there are several organizations learning that they're not getting arts and culture funding, and I will feel horrible about this. So I would say every 3 months, it's the hardest decision all over again.
Yeah.
It feels horrible.
Yeah. And there's just not enough money to go around. That's the problem. Your guilty pleasure, Netflix binge or Miami or Fort Lauderdale nightlife?
Netflix.
Me too.
Yeah.
One sentence that sums up your life motto.
It feels good to give back. And not only because I'm at our fund, I've always wanted to give back to the community. I just think it gives people the best feeling in the world. Nothing feels better.
Where is our fund office located?
We are on 26th Street in Wilton Station, currently in a storefront in the condos of Wilton Station. I don't know how much longer we'll be there. We are outgrowing that space, so talk to us in a year.
That's good news. Yeah, no, very good. That's on, what's that, 26th?
We're right off of 5 Points on 26th going east.
Very good. I want people to make certain that, that they know where to drop off the checks and to come in and sign.
The ourfund.org. You can go to the ourfund.org.
Ourfund.org. What I love about David's story, it proves that philanthropy isn't just about writing checks, although I just brought that up. It's about writing history. It's about changing lives. It's about giving comfort to people that need it. It's about expanding arts. It's about getting people to know about culture, getting them to know about some great archives that we have right in our city. It's about great theater that's right there. I have to thank you for all of the funding that you do for all of those various things. And now I guess I have to thank you for introducing my partner to me.
It was all because of me.
So thank you for that. What I appreciate is you're making your stories. You're making these moves that change lives. It's furthering our movement. It's furthering the freedoms that everyone should enjoy. It's keeping alive, even though we're not supposed to say diversity, equity, and inclusion anymore, but under any name, that's what it is. And that being understanding and caring and accepting of people who may be a little different than we are is so important. And so I thank you for that. And I thank you for all that you do and that Angel does. And thank you for leaving your mark on our community, leaving your mark in, I haven't heard you sing. That's
not pretty.
I bet that's not true.
I need 250 people singing around me for it to sound good.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
But thanks for sharing your vision and your knowledge and giving us the opportunity to know about our fund, knowing that we can get to it at ourfund.org, and that it's not just about giving $1 today. It's about including you in our estate planning and ensuring that our community is here and assuring that it's free and open to everyone and that the quality of life for the LGBT community is the best here in South Florida as anywhere in the country, right?
Right.
Very good. Thank you very much, David.
Thanks a lot.
For those of you, thank you very much for being at the Marty Davis Show, where we try and turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones, and we hope we give you the opportunities to give back to the community and to know different opportunities that will make a difference for our community. That's all for now. Thank you, David.